Sisters and brothers, thank you very much for inviting me here today. I must admit it seems to be a very fast journey we're on at the present time, and to me it's an enormous honour to be invited to address the TUC. It only seems a very short time ago that your General Secretary, Frances O'Grady, did me the honour of coming to speak at the nominating meeting in my constituency in Islington North, and now she's invited me here to address the TUC. I'm very grateful, Frances, for what you did then, and I'm delighted to be here today because I am, and always will be, an active trade unionist. That is in my body. I've been a trade union member all my life, and I was an organiser for the National Union of Public Employees before I became a Member of Parliament. I realise this is deeply controversial because they're now part of Unison, but you can only be in one union at a time, you know the problem. And that taught me a great deal about people, about values, and about the value of trade unions in the everyday lives of ordinary people. School cleaners, they've got a hard time. School meals workers being badly treated, school caretakers looking for some security in their jobs, all those issues that are day-to-day work of trade unions. And those that attack and criticise trade unions should remember this. There are 6 million of us in this country. We're the largest voluntary organisation in Britain. Every day we make a difference in looking after people in their ordinary lives, as well as a huge contribution in the wider community. Unions are not just about the workplace, they're also about society as a whole, life as a whole, and the right of the working class to have a voice in society as a whole. That is why trade unionism is so important. We celebrate the values of solidarity, of compassion, of social justice, of fighting for the underprivileged, and of working for people at home and abroad. Because whilst we value and protect the rights that we have in this country, the same thing does not apply to trade unionists all over the world. Those people that died in that dreadful fire in China, where there was a free market philosophy around the operation of a port, firefighters died trying to protect other workers who should have been protected by decent health and safety conditions. All around the world, Colombia and many other places, trade unionists trying to survive, trying to stand up for their rights. Trade unions in Britain have achieved a fantastic amount in protection and in the wider society. We need to stand in solidarity with trade unionists all over the world, demanding exactly the same things as we've secured for ourselves and trying to defend for ourselves. Trade unionism is a worldwide movement, not just a national movement, and we should never be ashamed to say that. There are those that say trade unions are a thing of the past and the idea of solidarity, unity and community are a thing of the past. Ever since this Labour leadership election was announced, and I've taken part in it, I've spoken at 99 different events all over Britain, 99 events in 99 days. And those events were often very large. They were bringing together people that had been estranged from the Labour movement or indeed from the Labour Party, and they were bringing together young people who had not been involved in that kind of politics before. But what brought them together was a sense of optimism and hope. What brought them together was a sense of the way things can be done better in politics in Britain. And those values I want restored to the heart of the Labour Party, which was, of course, itself a creation of the trade unions and socialists in the first place. And I have some news to report to you. Ever since last Saturday, large numbers of people have been joining the Labour Party. And the last figure I got, that was since Saturday afternoon, 30,000 people have become members of the Labour Party. Our membership is now more than 1/3 and rising. Over 500,000 people were able to take part in that election. But the values that people bring to joining the party and the party brings to them have to be things that we fight for every single day. And I want the unions and the Labour Party to work together, to win people over to the basic values we all accept, to change minds and change politics so that we can have a Labour government, we can look in a different direction, we can look away from the policy of growing inequality and look to a society that grows in equality, in confidence, in involvement of everybody and doesn't allow the gross levels of poverty and inequality to get worse in Britain. That is what the Tories have in store for us. But Labour must become more inclusive and open, and I've had the very interesting task in the last few days of a number of events and a number of challenges. The first thing I did on being elected was to go and speak at a rally in saying refugees are welcome here because they are victims of human rights abuses and other abuses. And I thought it was important to give that message out, that we recognise human rights abuses and the victims of it all over the world from wherever they come. They're human beings just like you and me. We hold out our hands and our hearts to them. We want to work with them for a safer and better world. They are seeking the same things that we're seeking. Later, the next day, I wanted also to give a message about how we intend to do things and the kind of society we want. And so I was very proud to accept an invitation to attend a mental health open day in my constituency or near my constituency to show that we believe the NHS is vital and valuable, as it obviously and absolutely is, but there are many people who suffer in silence from mental health conditions, suffer the abuse that often goes with those conditions, and the rest of society passes by on the other side. Mental illness is an illness just like any other, can be recovered from, but we have to be prepared to spend the time and the resources and end the stigma surrounding mental illness, which often comes from stress, workplace stress, poverty, and many other things. But there are other messages we have to put, and the media has been absolutely full of our midnight oil burning sessions in appointments to the new shadow cabinet of the Parliamentary Labour Party. And after consideration and thought and lots of discussion, we have assembled and appointed a shadow cabinet of a majority of women members for the first time ever in history. And to show how determined we are on a number of specific areas of policy, there is a specific shadow minister, Luciana Berger, who's dealing with mental health issues. She will be at the table along with everyone else. And as a specific minister dealing with housing, and that is because I believe John Healey will put the case very well. The issue is that we have to address the housing crisis that faces so many people all over this country. The free market isn't solving the problem of homelessness. The free market isn't allowing people to lead reasonable lives when they're paying excessive rents in the private rented sector. We have to change our housing policies fundamentally by rapidly increasing a council house building programme to give real security to people's lives. But there are other issues that we have to address, and that is how we make our party and our movement more democratic. The election process that I've just come through was an electorate of 558,000 people, the largest electorate ever for an internal party election. And the number of votes that were cast for me were more than twice the total membership of the Tory party in the whole country. That's something to savour. But all those people coming forward to take part in this process came forward, yes, because they were interested, yes, because they were hopeful, but yes, because they wanted to be part of a democratic process where we make policy together. We live in a digital age. We live in an age when communications are much easier. We live in an age when we can put our views to each other in a much quicker and in a much more understandable form. So we don't need to have policy making that is top-down from an all-seeing, all-knowing leader who decides things. I want everybody to bring their views forward. Every union branch, every party branch, every union. So we develop organically the strengths we all have, the ideas we all have, the imagination we all have. When we've all had a say in how we develop, say, the housing policy, say, the health policy, say, any other particular area of environmental protection or anything else, if everyone has been involved in that policy making, they own the policy that's there at the end. They're more determined to campaign and fight for it. They're more likely to mobilise many more people around it. So we don't go through till 2020 with a series of surprises. We go through to 2020 with a series of certainties that we're a growing stronger movement, we're more confident and more determined than ever, and above all, we're going to win in 2020, so we see the end of this Tory government. And when politicians get out of touch with reality, they sometimes forget where skill sets really lie. Can I give you an example? When I was a union organiser, we used to get involved in negotiations about work-study arrangements, time it took to drive a van from place A to place B, and how long it took to load the van, all those kind of issues. And so we'd go in there and start negotiations. And I would always go to the branch meeting beforehand and say, who here is keen on betting? Every hand went up, of course. Who's the best at betting? One particular hand would be pointed to and say, can you come along to the negotiations? Why? Because that member had brilliant skills at mental arithmetic. This was pre-computer days, and he'd work out very quickly, and he would say sotto voce to me, they're lying to you, Jerry, don't accept it, or whatever. Skills at the workplace, skills of ordinary people, knowledge of ordinary people. The elites in our society look with contempt on people with brilliance and ideas just because they don't speak like them or look like them. Let's do things differently and do things together. Had we had a different approach, would we now have the millstone of private finance initiatives around the necks of so many hospitals and so many schools in this country? Or would we instead have a more sensible form of public sector borrowing to fund for investment and fund for the future, rather than handing over our public services to hedge funds, which is exactly what this government would like us to do? Be confident, be strong. We've got lots of knowledge and lots of power. I've worked with unions affiliated to the Labour Party and not affiliated to the Labour Party, and I work with all trade unions because I think that is what the leader of the Labour Party should do. I think the leader of the Labour Party, if invited, should always be at the TUC. I see it as an organic link. And I want to say a special mention to one group of workers that are here, that are doing their best to defend something we all own and know and love. Welcome to those strikers from PCS, from the National Gallery, for what they're going through at the present time. They look after our national treasures in the National Gallery. They do it well, they love what they do, and they love what we've got in our National Gallery. Please, let's not privatise our galleries and privatise our staff. Welcome and recognise the skills of those people that work in all those places and so many other places as being a precious national asset, not something to be traded away on the market of privatisation. Well done to you for your campaign. Yesterday, the Tories put the second reading of the trade union bill to Parliament, and sadly it achieved its second reading and it's now gone into committee. Basically, they're declaring war on organised labour in this country ever since they won the general election, albeit with the support of 24% of the electorate. Yesterday, I was proud to sit alongside Angela Eagle on our front bench to oppose the trade union bill. And she rightly said, and I quote, that this bill is a dangerous attack on basic liberties that would not be tolerated by the Conservative Party if they were imposed on any other section of society. Stephen Doughty gave an excellent reply, and Labour MPs spoke with passion, knowledge and understanding of the dangers of this bill. It's quite interesting how the Tories champion deregulation wherever regulation is ever mentioned. How many times have we heard that? Ministers for deregulation, departments for deregulation, ministers who will tear up all regulations. But the one thing they really want to regulate is organised labour and the trade unions in this country. I think sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander, don't you? So we have to oppose it and recognise what they're doing. The burdens they're placing, as one Tory MP admitted, are actually the strategy that was used by General Franco in Spain on his control of the trade unions in Spain. They seem to still think that it's right just to attack trade unions because they exist. I'm not going to be lectured to by saying, well, if the Labour Party gets too close to unions, it puts us all on the back foot. Sorry. Trade unions are an essential and valuable part of modern Britain. 6 million people voluntarily join trade unions, and I'm proud to be a trade unionist. That's why we're going to fight this bill all the way. And when we've been elected as a majority in 2020, we're going to repeal this bill and replace it with a workers' rights agenda and something decent and proper for the future. But it's also, every difficulty actually gives you an opportunity. And the difficulty is this bill that's been placed in front of us, but the opportunity is it gives us the opportunity to defend civil liberties and traditional freedoms and explain to the wider public, beyond trade union members and others, that it's actually a threat to the liberties of all of us. Because by calling into question the right of free association of trade unions, they're actually in contravention, in my view, of Article 11 of the European Convention of Human Rights. They're also in contravention, as Stephen pointed out in his reply yesterday, to the International Labour Organization conventions. So we're going to continue our opposition to this. They're threatening the right of peaceful protest by looking to criminalise picketing. They're even threatening the right to free speech by seeking to limit what a union member can say on social media during a dispute. Are we really going to have teams of civil servants or lawyers or police or somebody trawling through massive numbers of Twitter messages, Facebook messages, to find something somebody said about their employer or about an industrial dispute? What kind of intrusive society are they really trying to bring about? We've got to fight this bill all the way, because if they get it through, it's a damage to the civil liberties of everybody in our society, and they will use it as a platform to make other attacks on other sections of our community. Let's be strong about this. But we also have to promote trade unionism and understand that good trade unions, good trade union organisation, yes, it protects people in the workplace, yes, it leads to better pay, better conditions, better salaries and better promotional opportunities as a whole, because it also means there's often better management in those places where unions are very strong. The two things actually go together and are very important. Where unions are weak, job security is weak, conditions get worse, and you look at the results of what this Conservative government is doing. They want to raise the threshold on strike ballots, so I'd like to just ask the Prime Minister this question. If you want trade unions to vote in ballots, why leave unions with the most archaic, expensive, inefficient method of voting you could find? Why not modernise the balloting? Above all, why not go forward and secure workplace balloting, ensuring that every member of a trade union can vote securely and secretly at their own workplace? That surely is something we all want in this bill and for ourselves. But they're also attacking the rights of trade unions to be involved in wider society. They've always been concerned in the Tories about the right of trade unions to be involved in political actions in any way. Why shouldn't workers organised together in a union express a political view? Why shouldn't they use their funds, if they wish, on political or public campaigning? We had the bill in the Act in the last Parliament that restricted the participation of unions and charities in public commentary during an election. This is taking it a stage even further. They seem quite relaxed about the involvement of hedge funds and funny money in politics. They seem absolutely obsessed with the cleanest money in politics, which is trade union funds being used for political campaigning. So we're going to oppose this bill with every opportunity we get. We're going to expose it for what it is, and we're going to try and stop it passing. And as I've said, we will try to replace this bill with something much better. But there are other issues that we have to remind ourselves of what is going on at the present time. The Welfare Reform Bill is anything but welfare reform. It's all about building on the cuts they've already made, making the lives of the most vulnerable and poorest people in our society even worse. And the disability benefit cuts that have been made over the past 5 years and the availability of a work test have had some disastrous, appalling consequences where people have even committed suicide and taken their own lives out of a sense of desperation. I simply ask the question, what kind of a society are we living in where we deliberately put regulations through, knowing what the effects are going to be on very poor and very vulnerable people who end up committing suicide, and we say it's all part of a normal process? No, it is not. And so the reduction in the benefit cap has the effect of socially cleansing many parts of our towns and cities. Owen Smith and I had discussions last night about amendments that we're going to put down to the Welfare Reform Bill, and as far as I'm concerned, the amendments we're putting forward are to remove the whole idea of the benefit cap altogether. We need to raise wages and regulate rents rather than have a welfare system that does two things of subsidising high rents and low wages. Surely we can do things differently and better if we really want to. We'll bring down the welfare bill in Britain by controlling rents and boosting wages, not by impoverishing families and the most vulnerable people. I have to leave straight away after I've concluded my remarks here, because I want to be back in Parliament to vote against their attempt to cut the tax credits that act as a lifeline to millions of people. Bernardo's say that it would take £1,200 a year away from a lone parent of two of working full-time minimum wage. The government says there's no alternative to this. John McDonnell, our new Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer, is setting out what the alternatives are. They call us deficit deniers, but then they spend billions cutting taxes for the richest families and for the most profitable businesses. What they are is poverty deniers. They're ignoring the growing queues at food banks. They're ignoring the housing crisis. They're cutting tax credits when child poverty rose by 500,000 under the last government to over 4 million. Let's be clear. Austerity is actually a political choice that this government has taken, and they're imposing it on the most vulnerable and poorest in our society. It's our job as Labour to set out a vision for a better society and campaign proudly alongside Britain's greatest democratic organisations, the trade union movement. Our shared vision will be delivered by shared campaigning. A Labour Party proud to campaign with trade unions, and a trade union movement proud to campaign with Labour. We have a job to do to understand the process that's been going through at the moment in politics in Britain. Understand the levels of inequality that are there. Understand the levels of insecurity of people on 0-hours contracts, students with massive debts. Understand the stress and tension that so many people have. We're actually quite a rich country. We're actually a country that is deeply unequal. Surely, the whole vision of those that founded our unions and founded our political parties was about doing things differently. That generation, those brilliant people, brought us the right to vote, got women the right to vote, brought us the National Health Service, and brought us so many other things. We build on that in the way we do our policy. We build on that in the way we develop our movement. We build on that in the way that we inspire people to come together for a better, more decent, more equal, fairer, more just society. These things aren't dreams. These things are practical realities we together intend to achieve. Thank you very much for inviting me here today.